everybody. How you doing today? This is Saucony Prince, and I am super excited and super pumped to actually be able to share with you another amazing podcast titled H.E.A.L. H.E.A.L is an acronym for Help Elevate and Learn, and it's a guide for healing your inner child based on my latest book. And I am super excited because this book has really allowed me an opportunity to dive into the possibility that our current day behavior has some roots in our childhood. And because of that, I think that oftentimes we don't see the connection. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to actually write the book and start this podcast, because I want to start the conversation. I don't want to end it. I want to start the conversation surrounding our mental health, our childhood wounds, childhood traumas, but even more importantly, our childhood healing. And so I am super excited to actually be able to bring all of this to you. And this is also brought to you by our sponsor, BetterHelp.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/SauconyPrinceHeal. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who's had years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or your computer, via a phone call, a video chat, or messaging. However you feel most comfortable. It is the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/SauconyPrinceHeal or choose Saucony Prince Heal during your sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month.
As you can tell, we are so excited to have BetterHelp to come alongside and partner with us to actually bring this podcast to you and these timely discussions about our childhood wounds, childhood trauma, but even more so, like I said, childhood healing. So many of us find ourselves dealing with situations that really go beyond just a once in a lifetime occurrence. You know, sometimes we overreact to certain situations and we really don't understand why. And some people just chalk it up to the fact, well, that's just how I am. And I ask people, all the time, it's not what you do, but why. And if you never really get to the root of why we do the things we do, we'll find ourselves, in fact, repeating cycles, which really is not serving us. It's not putting us in the best possible state and not making us the best possible version of ourselves. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have these discussions, and because I wanted to bring you none other than the best of the best individuals. I want to introduce you to our speaker for today, to our guest for today, none other than Kathy Barton-Brown. Kathy, are you there?
I am here.
All right. Kathy, take a minute and tell people about who you are and why they should tune in to what you have to say.
Well, I am a licensed therapist in private practice, psychotherapist, and I empower people every day and help them overcome childhood trauma, childhood wounds, and attachment injuries. I've been in the field 40 years, and I came into the field because of my own childhood trauma. My father was a batterer, and my mom and I and my brother were actually held captive and were rescued by the police. And after being rescued by the police, my mom had a complete nervous breakdown, as we call it. And it took 6 months for her to recover. But when she recovered, she spent the rest of her days empowering women, helping women get free from codependent relationships. And so my mom was a social worker. So I'm a second generation social worker, and many social workers come into the field to help people because of their own childhood traumas. So I have a master's degree in social work. I have an LMSD, which is licensed master social worker. I have an ACSW, which is the academy. It's a national accreditation, Academy of Certified Social Workers, and I have a PhD in humanities. So I am dedicated. I know that my purpose on earth is to help people get free in their mental health, because so many people grow up hearing children are to be seen and not heard. It's number one. And number two, what goes on in this house stays in this house. So we teach our children at an early age not to talk about the things that are most damaging to them, the things that torture them, the things that are horrendous that have happened to them. We teach them, don't talk about what hurts your heart. And then we wonder why they're strung out on drugs, why they're alcoholics, why they're angry people. But we created the situation by not allowing them to explore and heal from their pain.
Yeah, and that is so, so true. And I oftentimes share with people, especially when I'm up speaking, I tell them, I say, listen, what happened to you may not have been your fault, but it is your responsibility. And what I mean by that is what happened to you may not have been your fault, but how you react and how you respond, I believe that's your responsibility. It's all our responsibilities to address it, to deal with it, and to move past it. Because if we stay the victim and play the victim, we'll never get to that version of ourselves which is free, that version of ourselves which is able to actually help somebody else. And
That's right.
so listen, let's hop into some of these questions real quick because I know you have some
Okay.
incredible insight, and I want to make sure that you have enough time to share everything that you've learned. Well, not everything you learned, but just enough to help somebody get to a better place. So
Okay.
one of the first questions I want to ask is, in your professional opinion, how important is inner child healing?
Sakoni, I don't think there's anything more important than healing the inner child. So many people try to press on and never deal with those childhood issues, and
Right.
actually they turn into adult children. You're still stuck at the age of the trauma. So many times we see people who look very well versed in age, yet there's a mentality that represents maybe a teenager or even younger than a teenager, and those
Right.
are the age of the trauma, and they kind of get stuck in the age of where that trauma was. So it's critical to address what went on in childhood and how it affected us.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is something that I'm a huge advocate for because again, I have seen it, I've seen it in family, I've seen it in friends, and just being able to kind of step back and observe and, well, and that really kind of brings me to another one of the questions, um, as far as like, how can you help somebody? How can somebody help somebody struggling to identify if they have a need for that type of work? I mean, what can you say? Is there anything that you can do to, to kind of nudge them or encourage them? Should you bring it to their attention? Because again, I've noticed a lot of people, they don't draw the connections. And so is
Mhm.
there a way to raise their awareness of that possibility?
Yes, I think a lot of it is teaching and educating, and particularly when we're close to people. So,
Okay.
starting with those people in marketing used to be called the warm circle or warm market, those people closest to us.
Okay.
When you have relationship with people, a loving relationship, it's easier to point out areas that they need to grow in. So, if
Right.
you see someone who gets angry and blow up, it's easy once they calm down to say, now what happened? Tell me what was the trigger. Because see, triggers they're sneaky because they're silent, they're sometimes unconscious. And so let's say if you were beaten, by a family member and that family member wore a certain cologne, you can have someone walk across your path with that cologne and you trigger back to this sad, depressed state and you don't know what happened. But what happened is the brain remembers that cologne is associated with a physical violent act. And so
Right.
not being aware. So when we have people close to us who notice these patterns and love us enough to point them out. Now, once they're pointed out, we have to have the drive to want to be better and want to heal.
And that's so, so true. I remember this well-known media mogul was abused, in fact, when he was a child, and every time it happened in a dark room.
Hmm.
And in fact, when he started to actually date, and he was on a date, he was with this young lady, everything was going good and great, and she turned the lights off. He got immediately angry, and I mean to the point to where it was like, "What's wrong?" And it was a trigger. It was a
Yeah.
trigger, you know. And so we have to be honest enough with ourselves to look at our current behavior and see, is anything being triggered by, again, a childhood wound or a childhood trauma.
Hmm.
So, so in your professional opinion, when should somebody start? I know we talk about the importance of, but like when should they start? If they've identified, okay, I have some childhood trauma or a childhood wound. In fact, when should they start the work?
I think the moment you realize, when you become conscious that
Hmm.
this is an issue, when you become conscious that every time you're in a certain environment, you have a reaction, knowing your reactions, because that's usually what happens first. I don't know why, when I get in the presence of this person, I just get nervous. And so when you begin to see reactions, it's time to address them. If you, every time you see the color red, sit down and when did I first have a reaction to the color red? It may go
Mm.
back to you saw somebody murdered. It may go back to your mom got sick and got injured and had blood all over her, and ever since then you've had a negative reaction to the color red. So when we have the awareness, that's the point to start dealing with it. Because when we don't deal with it, we get multiple layers. When you have multiple layers, you almost have to jackhammer through it because it's like concrete in the soul. So if you
Ooh.
address it as soon as you feel it and get the reaction, then it's not so hard to do the work, because when you let it pile up, it's a lot of work to go through.
Yes, yes. And when you said it's like concrete in the soul, and you got to use the jackhammer. I saw the visual of that, and just being able to really
Mhm.
address those layers of trauma. So, and this is a question that you shared with me, and I really want to delve into it because, quite frankly, it's better than the rest of them, the fact that I have. But your question was, how does trauma show up in life and relationships?
Listen, you know, you've heard the saying, "Looking for love in all the wrong faces,"
Yeah.
and oftentimes we wonder, how is it that I've been in the same relationship with the same person with a different name and face all my life?
Mm.
Because someone in your history, like for instance, I'll give you an example. So I was working with a young lady, and her dad was very harsh, very mean, always had a mean face, and this little girl was attracted to an angry clown. She
An
was
angry
she was
clown.
a clown. She was at a church function, and they had this clown, and the clown looked like he had just come out of the prison. I mean, he just looked like he was hard, he was angry, and all the kids were running away from the clown. But this one little girl was attracted to the clown and following the clown around. And her father just happened to be there at this function, and I was there. And I talked to her father and said, "Where's your daughter?" And he said, "Right there." And I said, "What is she doing?" Following the clown. "Do you see any other children following the clown?" No. "Why do you think your daughter, 8-year-old daughter, is following the clown?" She was
Mm.
already predestined by her father to be attracted to angry men. Now,
Mm.
if she gets older and get involved with an angry man and he puts his hands on her, who's the first person that's going to kill him? Her father.
Yeah.
Yet he taught her to be comfortable with an angry man.
Mm.
So we have to go back and look at those cycles. So beginning to work with that little girl to teach her this is how fathers are supposed to be. But when a father has a childhood wound and trauma and does not address it, 50% of the time he's going to repeat it. 50% of the time he's going to change it. My mom was devastated that her mother was not warm and affectionate and tender and kind and loving. At 10 years old, she said, "If I ever have children, I'm going to love them. I'm going to kiss them. I'm going to hug them and love them." Because at 10 years old, she knew there was a void in her soul. So my mom grew up to be the social worker, loving on people, teaching mothers how to love their children because she had a childhood wound that she recognized at 10 years old. She
Right.
changed generations. My generation, affected my children. That's another generation. So recognizing when there's a wound and making a decision to do something about it.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, as you were talking, I was thinking about that very thing. And it goes into the story I heard about two sons that were raised by his alcoholic father. And in fact, when they became adults, one became just like him. The other one was the
Mhm,
total opposite. It's
mhm,
because they made a choice. They made a
mhm.
choice not to be like what they saw or to be like what they saw. And see, the
That's
thing of
right.
it is, I think a lot of people, they don't really understand that you still have a choice. You know, one of the things that God never takes away from us is our ability to choose.
That's right.
And I even talk about in my book, you know, that it's never too late to have a happy childhood. You know, we can, for lack of a better term, reparent ourselves. And I know that means that we don't have a time machine and we can't go back in time, but we can minister to that little child. We can actually encourage that little child. We can make peace with that, with our inner
Hmm.
child, and we can
Hmm.
actually begin to experience life anew with that same childlike enthusiasm, adventure, you
Hmm.
know, caring, loving. A couple of years ago, I did a video where I talked about telling your limits goodbye, and I
Hmm.
talked about our life being like a bucket, and on the side of the bucket there were holes. The hole may have been at the bottom, in the middle, or towards the top. And I don't care what size the bucket was, it was limited. The capacity of the bucket was limited by the hole because whatever you put in it, whatever you poured in it, poured out of that hole. And so
Hmm.
my thing was plug up the holes so you can have more capacity. And some people have holes in their trust. Some people have holes in their love. Some people have, you know,
Right.
holes in what they are afraid of. And
Hmm.
so they are constantly in a effect depleted state. But if we realize we have a choice and we can actually address those issues, then we can show up better for those people around us.
That's right. I call it rewriting history.
Ooh, I like that. I like that.
Rewriting
Rewriting.
history. Rewriting history. Because of that wound that my mom had at 10 years old, we had the most fun because she was a kid with us. Because she got a chance to relive, rewrite her history as a child by teaching us and giving us experiences she never had. So
Right.
every Saturday we went somewhere. Every weekend she planned something. We would go across the bridge to Canada, have a picnic, $5, have a picnic, sitting on the picnic table, eating bologna sandwiches, chips, and a pop, and walk down to the water and collect rocks. And whoever had the prettiest rock got a prize. And we take all the rocks back to America, and then we would set them up on display. But she took
Uh,
the simplest things. You know, she'd take 10 kids, pile them in her Volkswagen, and take them out to the beach because life became fun for her because she got a chance to be a kid again. She rewrote her own history.
right.
I said,
Right.
Mom, I said, you act like a kid. And she said, I will always be a kid. And now my daughter says the same thing to me. Mom, you're such a kid. And I said, yep, I'll always be a kid. Kids have fun. They know how to
Right.
have fun without fun, unlimited fun. And that's what we
Right.
get to do when we take the time to heal the inner child.
And that is so important. And I tell people all the time that there's a difference between childish and childlike.
Right,
I'm gonna say that again
right.
for those that are taking notes. There's a difference between childish and childlike. Childish is
Mhm.
selfish. It's
That's
all
right.
about self and what satisfies self. But childlike is the experience of life that involves the benefit of other people.
Hmm.
You know, children that are selfish, they throw tantrums because I want what I want and I want it now. I don't care about
Hmm.
you. I don't care about what you're dealing with. I don't care about what you're feeling. I want what I want. As
Hmm.
opposed to someone who is children that haven't been tainted by in fact society's thought process are so free and so giving.
Right.
You know, they will share what they have. They will take a lick off a lollipop and hand it in somebody else's mouth. I mean, they are just giving. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, it's when things happen that tend to scar us, to where we start pulling back. And I've even talked about it in my book a little bit about how, we either have a healthy inner child, or we have one that we pacified, or one that we've locked in a dungeon. I mean, there are so many things that can happen, and we are the ones that have the answers.
Right.
You know, I keep telling people all the time, in order to get the right answers, you have to ask the right questions, but we never
Mhm.
ask the right questions of ourselves.
Mhm.
And that's to me why personal development is so important. And again, my slogan, like I've said before, I'm Sakoni Prince of SakoniPrince.com, where we make motivation personal. We're introducing you to yourself.
Yourself. Mhm.
Just doing that, I realized I was leaving out a critical part, and that was the inner child.
Mhm. Mhm.
So let me ask you this.
Mhm.
Do you believe that a person can do inner child work or therapy on their own?
Okay. Um, I believe they can go so far on their own, but
Got you.
they
Got
get in the deeper issues. You may need some help navigating.
right.
Because especially if you had negativity in your home growing up, because one negative thought is 10 times louder than a positive thought.
That's true.
And so if you're told you're stupid one time, you need 10 affirmations of you're smart, you're smart, we don't get that. And so
Right.
you'll get to a certain place from doing research, reading books, studying your book. You get to a certain place, but then you're going to hit a brick wall because go to the other side, you may need some professional help. And if
Right.
you don't get the professional help, you could regress and slide all the way back. You could slide into depression because you hit something with a trigger that's overwhelming. I remember I had 3 childhood traumas and I had literally suppressed them all. I was driving down the road after my mom passed, and all 3 of them came back at one time. I had to pull
Wow.
off over on the side of the road because I would not allow myself subconsciously to deal with them until my mom was gone because I knew my mom was crazy enough that she probably was going to hurt somebody. So I
Oh,
locked him away and suppressed him to make sure that my mom stayed safe because I needed her.
right.
So there's two quotes that come to mind. One is "To thine own self be true," William Shakespeare. You have to be willing to take that mask off, look in the mirror, and say, "I'm jacked up." And these are the areas that I'm jacked up in. And I hate it so bad. I hate the pain. I hate the way it's caused me to act with my loved ones. And I want to do something about it. The other one is Georgia Dare. Everything I ever wanted is on the other side of fear. So you're going to have to face the fear of growing through it because I believe you grow through it, whatever comes up. And your test becomes your testimony. The emoni is only the story of overcoming whatever that TEST is. And so when you deal with the childhood traumas, that was your test. And now you heal from it. Now you can go help other women. Like when my mom was a battered woman, once she healed, our home became a haven for women that were battered. And so she would chase men away to make sure that women were safe. She took her pain and used her pain to help someone else gain a place in life. And that's what our whole life is about. How can I take what I've been through and impact someone else? How can I take the hurt that I've had? And healing hurts. We don't want
Ooh,
to
say
talk
that
about
again. Say that again.
healing hurts. Healing hurts. It's just like surgery. If you got an issue with your knee because you worked it in the plant and walked on concrete for 30 years, that knee is hurting. But if you have surgery on the knee, it's going to hurt more intensely before it gets better.
Right.
Before it's all the way healed, it's going to hurt worse. So a lot of times when we initially deal with childhood traumas or attachment injuries, we hurt more because now we're having to feel the pain. People who are alcoholics, they numb the pain up, or heavy cannabis smokers, or drug users, they want to numb the pain. But there comes a day that you can't numb the pain. You got to face the pain. And that's usually the transition into a sober life or a clean life. But until you make the decision, I'm going to go through this pain because healing hurts. But on the other side of it, the liberty and freedom is worth the hurt.
You know, you remind me of when I had my total hip replacement back in 2017. And I remember after, well, first of all, I didn't even really think about the surgery until after it was over because I knew
Mm-hmm.
that I had more to do. I knew I had more life to live and it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't going to get any better. It was going to get worse. So my whole goal was to actually be able to go through the surgery so I could get back to doing what I've been called and given to do.
Mm-hmm.
But after the surgery was over, the male nurse came in there and he was kind of like a rehab nurse. And he said something to me that was so telling and it really helped me. He said, there's a difference between soreness and pain. He said, what you're
Mm-hmm.
experiencing now is soreness. And so we need to get
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
moving so that the muscles and everything can start the healing process so you can be able to have the full motion of your new hip. And in fact, he
Mm-hmm.
said that because my mind went to, in fact, when he started moving and twisting my leg, I was thinking about what happened and how it hurt before the surgery. But when he
Mm-hmm.
made that clarification, I was willing to endure that pain. It was still pain, but I knew that
Mm-hmm.
it was getting me to where I could have the motion and the range of motion that I needed in order to get back to the life that I wanted to live.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you said healing hurts, I thought about that because a lot of people want to avoid the pain of going through the process of healing because it hurts. But there's more hurt in not healing because it is
Mm-hmm.
perpetual. It keeps showing up and it's there. And you really have to have a reason. You know, I talk about this being my sixth book. I
Mm-hmm.
actually I actually wrote a book entitled Shooting from the Hip 7 Life Lessons I Learned from My Total Hip Replacement.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the chapters I talked about that you have to have a why. Why are you trying to heal? What are you trying to get back to? It's not just I want to I want to get my hip replaced just to have it replaced. What is it going to allow you? What's your why? If you
Mm-hmm.
know that you're going to be able to actually spend more time with your children, your grandchildren, be more mobile, be more independent, then that should be the reason why you go and have the surgery. If you're not doing anything, if you're not planning on doing anything, if you don't want to do anything, why even bother? So you have to be able to see the freedom that comes with going through that process. And even with our inner child healing, how much freer can we be if we heal? How much better can our relationships be if we heal? So, are you still there? Am I froze? I think I'm froze. Hello? I'm gonna wait a second. Hello? Can you hear me? I think I'm froze. Okay, shoot. Okay, can everybody hear me? If you can hear me, comment. Because even on my computer, it's the same thing. Can you hear me? Let's see. Okay, good. Well, it's showing on my YouTube channel, so I'm super excited to know that it didn't stop the feed. Hopefully, Kathy get a chance to actually chime back in and actually get back on. But like I was saying, my total hip replacement gave me an opportunity to understand the difference between soreness and between pain. Although they seem to be the same, they were different because my soreness allowed me a chance to actually push past that pain to realize that I had a life to live. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to text Miss Kathy Barton-Brown to see if she can get back on. Yes, can you get back on? See, this is what happens when you do stuff live. This is what happens when you do stuff live. So again, and she's coming back in. She's coming back in, and all right, there we go. I have no idea what that is, but I am super excited to have you back because, like I was sharing, I mean, there's a difference right between soreness and pain and being able to actually
Mm-hmm.
know that and see the benefit of healing. Because if you don't see the benefit of healing, if you don't see a better relationship, a better outlook on life, happier, I mean, even being the example to your family and friends,
Right.
that
Mm-hmm.
should be a benefit. And like you talked about your mother, she literally became a poster child for you and for your
Mm-hmm.
children of
Mm-hmm.
why healing is so important. And I even talk about
Mm-hmm.
that in my book. How like the last chapter is really about helping other people. So it's not just about you getting the healing that you need, but you being able to help somebody else achieve
Mm-hmm.
that same level. And so again, I cannot emphasize it enough how important it is, for us to actually take on the monumental task of inner child healing. I know we touched on this a little earlier, but I do want to kind of just circle back to it like one more
I
time.
think one of the things that is consistent. Oops, I'm
No,
sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying that one of the consistent things that happen in children who have childhood wounds when they're adults is defense mechanisms. We develop defense mechanisms. And you talked about how some people avoid. That's one of the defense mechanisms, just avoiding. You hear people say, I had a perfect childhood. And when you start talking to them, it's like, well, wait a minute. Uncle Chester was a molester. Your mom was a closet alcoholic. Your dad was running around everybody the family. So all of these things that were presented as perfection really are cover-ups, and they're band-aids on a gunshot wound because they really are not cover-ups. So some of the defense mechanisms, it can be projection. I assign to you how I really feel.
Right.
I don't really like you, but I say you don't like me. But one of the ones that really affect relationships is when someone has been abandoned. And so it can be actual abandonment or perceived abandonment, because there are a lot of people who grow up with their father in the home, but he works all the time. So he's not present. So they
Right.
feel abandoned even though they weren't technically abandoned. So when we have abandonment issues from childhood, they come across in two different ways. Either the person can be really clingy, like person can't get away from them,
Right.
or they do things to make the person reject them. So they may actually know that, let's say a woman knows that her husband cannot stand smoking, but she'll
Mm.
smoke just to get at him. And so she becomes a passive aggressive person because she wants the attention, but at the same time, she's testing, see, do you love me beyond this? Because if my own mama, my own daddy didn't love me enough to stay in my life and keep me, why would you? And real confusing, they'll do the same thing, both of them at the same time, be clingy and behavior to push you away. But then when you walk away, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then they can't figure out, see, you just like my daddy, you just like my mama, you left me just like everybody else, but they don't see how they played a role in it. But that is how the defense mechanism and the result of childhood wounds show up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But being
And
aware, we can have healthier relationships, because when you throw rejection in on top of it and abandonment, it's hard. It's a wonder any relationship survive without some type of positive, influence or professional help.
yeah. And that is so, so true. So, and which is one of the reasons why I'm an advocate for people. Again, my personal development journey started looking at me and
Hmm.
trying to understand me and trying to figure me out and trying to see why I did the things that I did. Again, like I said, it's not just what you do, but why. And if we
Hmm.
never take that approach, if we never really are willing to be that critical of ourselves, then we'll look at other people and like, why does she do that? Why did he do that? Why does he act like that? Why does she act like that? But when have we actually taken the time to ask ourselves that question?
Hmm.
When have we taken the time to actually been that critical of ourselves, and not from a negative standpoint, but just trying to figure out, okay, how can I fix this? If this
Hmm.
isn't serving me, if it isn't doing anything to actually help benefit me, how can I fix it? As you talked about your mom, even though she had that childhood wound, it became a positive for her
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
she turned it around and she used it to be a help to other people. And quite frankly, I can say the same thing even about myself because the world is benefiting from the childhood wound that I've had.
That's right. Hmm.
And so in my mind, it wasn't really a negative per se, but it was something that was a catalyst for the positive work that I'm able to do today.
Hmm.
And it's something that's near and dear to my heart because again, I know just how freeing it is to be able to understand who you are, to know yourself. And like I tell people all the time, until you know who you are, anything can stop you.
That's right.
But once you know who you are, nothing can.
That's right.
And so my thing is to help people to really understand themselves in their totality, not just the avatar, not just the adult version of who they think themselves to be, but even that part of themselves that they may have ignored or pacified or locked away, pretending isn't there, but that keeps showing up in their relationships, in their on their job, their business, with their diets, with their goals, wherever they are. And so really understanding that we all have a part to play in being a better version of ourselves. So
Hmm.
I am again,
I
well,
think.
listen,
Mhm.
go ahead.
I think one key element that was really eye opening for me was learning about codependency, because with codependency, there's a lot of focus on pleasing people or winning the approval of people. And so
Right.
we take on things that, the boundaries are enmeshed. And so we take on, if my best friend got a problem, it's my problem. If my
Mm,
sister don't have enough money because she gets high and she don't have enough money to pay her rent and I'm codependent, I'll give her my bill money to pay her rent knowing I don't have enough. And it all depends on what the role was when we were growing up. If you were in the role of the caretaker, then you take care of people even if it hurts, which is very
mm,
dysfunctional. There's a
yeah.
book called Codependent No More, and it's by Melody Beattie, Battie. And she talks about how having an alcoholic father set her up to be codependent. And when she began to look at these behaviors that she had, she realized there's a whole community of people who had the same behaviors. And then you can dismantle the things that's been set up to keep you dysfunctional. A lot of people in relationships, they can't understand why this relationship is just not working. Well, you're not able to be your true self because you're walking in a role created for you as a wounded child, not a
Mm,
healed adult. So that's
right.
one of the critical reasons why doing the work is important, because you have to heal those spaces, or you come into relationships and you dump all the stuff you didn't heal on your spouse or partner. And it's challenging enough to bring two people from two different backgrounds together to merge as one, because they still have to have their own identity and yet merge at the same time.
Right.
But if you have the chaos, the baggage, the drama and the trauma, and you don't heal it, you fight an unseen monster that you can't even figure out what's going on, which is why the divorce rate is so high.
Mm, that is so true. And I think that, in fact, we owe it to ourselves, to really, again, just ask the question, is it me? You know, what I,
Exactly.
what, what do I need to do to be the best version of myself and show up for my spouse
Hmm.
in that way?
Hmm.
And, I by no means have, mastered that. But again, my whole thing has been to start the conversation, to really, and not just start the conversation, but even start the work on myself. And if
Hmm.
I waited until I have perfected everything in order to share anything with anybody else, I never, I never will be saying anything. But
Be on a cage bent over. I think I'm ready now.
yeah, yeah, that is so true, so true. So a couple of more things before we wrap this up. One, if somebody wanted to get in contact with you, how could they do that? If they wanted to work with you, how could they reach out to you?
I'm on Facebook. You can look me up on Facebook, Kathy Barton-Brown. I'm on
Okay.
Instagram, Dr. Kathy Barton-Brown. Um, if you Google me, I pop up. You can send me a message in Messenger. You can ask Mr. Saccone Prince to give you my telephone number. I'm an open book, and my mission is helping people. I do have people in other states, and insurance company pays for it because we're more open now because of Better Help and other online programs. And so I do across state lines and helping people with virtual appointments. But my life mission is empowering people to be a better version of themselves and being free. This is National Mental Health Awareness Month,
It
and I've been
is.
doing a weekly series on our local ABC station to empower people to know it's okay to get help, and it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to stay not okay.
Mm, that part. That part. I tell my kids all the time there's nothing wrong with needing help, but
Mhm,
there's everything wrong with needing it and not being willing to ask. So
mhm.
that's so true.
And
So,
the difference in getting professional help, the
ah,
difference is because some people, and I'm not knocking churches, but some people go to church and pour their heart out, and then when it's repeated in the church, because you can't give a testimony in church because people start talking about you, your real testimony, or you may
yeah,
hear it over the pulpit, unfortunately, because we do have some not so mature pastors or leaders. But when you
right.
get professional help, we are bound by the laws of confidentiality and the code of ethics, which means if I violate your confidentiality and your trust, you have the right to sue me for $250,000 per incident and or 10 years in prison, and I lose my license.
Ooh,
So that changed April 2003. So we know the HIPAA laws, but when it comes to mental health services, it's a double seal. It's a double HIPAA violation. And so it's a great penalty for a professional violating your trust. That's why you need to go to a professional. If you do not trust the person you're speaking with, those heart secrets you're not going to talk about. So you're going to be shooting the breeze and la, but you're not going to get the help that you need. I will fire people. Don't come and
mm,
waste my time. Don't waste your insurance money because this is not about money for me. This is about souls being free and growing. If you want to grow, let's talk. If you want to shoot the breeze and shuck and jive, I'm not the one.
right, right.
Life is too short. Do you want to spend the rest of your life being happy, filled with joy, and free? Or you want to stay bound up? It's a choice. You have to look yourself in the mirror and ask, do I want to be free or I want to continue being in the state that I've been in?
Mm, wow, wow. That is so, so true. So, listen, do you have any final words for our listeners?
Yes, do life different. Do it in a different way. Don't let a day pass that you're not making wonderful memories. Because one day we'll look back and all we will have are the memories. None of us are here to stay. If you're not building relationships, don't destroy them. If you're not able to see somebody who harmed you in the past without your gut wrenching, resolve it. Now, you can't always get an apology out of people who have done dirt to you, but you can heal your own inner self. Put an empty chair in front of you and talk to that child that was wounded. Talk to the person that offended you or hurt you. You don't have to carry that stuff. There are ways to get it out. Write a letter to the person, read the letter out loud, then burn the letter up. And that symbolizes all the childhood pain because things that have been burnt up don't come back together again. Or bury it. Things that's been buried better not come back up again. So get that stuff out of you, off of you, so that you can have the very best life that God intended for you to have. And know that you are fearfully, which means awesomely and wonderfully made. It is not about what anybody said about you. It is not about what you've done. It is only what you believe about yourself that matters in the end. You're not what they said about you, but you are what you think about you. And that's what you have to perfect and walk in. What is God's plan for you? Because that's all that matters.
That is it. That is so so true. So listen, in fact, before we get out of here, I do have to actually share with you again that we are sponsored by BetterHelp.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/SacconiPrinceHill. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who's had years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or your computer, via a phone call, a video chat, or messaging. However you feel most comfortable, it is the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/SacconiPrinceHill or choose Sacconi Prince Hill during your sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month.
Well, you can see how excited I was and still am that Kathy Barton-Brown joined us for our podcast. And I want you to know that a lot of stuff she shared, I wholeheartedly agree with, because I believe we all have work to do. All of us have work to do. We can be a better version of ourselves. And a lot of it starts with us doing that work. And like she said, sometimes healing hurts. But we need to go through the hurt in order to get to the freedom that is waiting on us on the other side. So listen, I want to thank you for tuning in. I actually would like to share this podcast so somebody else can understand this valuable lesson and we can heal from our inner child wounds and inner child trauma. We'll talk to you later. Bye.